the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
And we welcome you back. And speaking of the NFL, our next guest plays a pretty prominent role in coverage of the National Football League. Mike Tirico, the lead broadcaster on Monday Night Football. You saw him last Saturday do the Arizona-Carolina game. Since then, I think you've seen him do a Big Ten basketball game, a bowl game, and, of course, he'll be doing the championship game on ESPN radio. And who knows what else he'll be doing. Mike, thanks for being on. It is such a great pleasure and an honor to have you with us today.
The highlight of my week to be on Finebaum. This is great. Hello, Paul. How you doing, man?
Great to talk to you. And,
Same here.
I'm going to start off. You probably were thinking, okay, he's going to ask me about this or that. But I'm going to start with a golf question. Tiger Woods announced today that he's not only playing Phoenix, but he's playing the next week in San Diego. Yeah. And as the lead voice of ESPN, what do you make out of Tiger's latest comeback?
Well, it'll be interesting to see because now it's not only a comeback with significant health questions again, but it's also a new swing. And what I always like to watch, Paul, is how does that swing adjustment or a new adjustment hold up under pressure? Because that's where it really magnifies. You can just stripe it. A lot of folks listening who play golf, they've won a lot of championships on the range. You know, you just hit it, and you hit it great. Go, man, this is so good. Why can't I take it to the course? That happens sometimes to the best in the world, especially when they're making a swing adjustment. I think this adjustment in Tiger's swing is to be less by the numbers and more a feel player, which I think goes back to his roots. I don't know if he's going to win. Forget the 4 majors, another one. I just don't know if he's going to win 15. It's going to come down to his ability to chip and putt, which used to be great and has not been as good under pressure the last 3 or 4 years. So that's what I'll be watching the most, Phoenix, Torrey, and whatever else he plays on the run-up to Augusta in April.
Mike, on that subject, I mean, he's still at a given tournament the most compelling figure in sports. I mean, there's Tiger and then there's the tournament. But if he goes another year without winning a major, and I think what was the last one, 08? Maybe I'm off on that. Yeah, I mean, at some point will we begin to get our eyes will glaze over in looking at the Tiger tournament and the rest of it, or how long will this keep going?
A little bit. I think there's been a correction in the coverage in terms of the week-to-week in TV. And just the interest level. The fans want to know what Tiger's doing. First thing you want to know, where's Tiger, and then who's leading. For the majority of fans, there are a lot of folks who just love the sport and want to see Rory McIlroy as much as anybody else or Bubba Watson as much as anyone else. But Tiger brings more people to the TV beyond the regular hardcore golf fan. And that interest remains, and I think with everything that happened away from golf, in addition to his extraordinary run on golf, the likes of which we had never seen, that kind of a stretch of dominance, that's why people still will come to the mailbox and see if there's an envelope in there. And they're going to keep doing it. And you almost have interest, Paul, in watching him not succeed. Because we saw so many shots of his dominance, to see him struggle is almost odd for a lot of us. So I think either way, at least for the next 3 or 4 years, he's going to maintain that Q factor, that interest level. He's the one golfer that if you ask somebody who never follows the sport, say, name a golfer. Oh, Tiger Woods. So I think that will carry over for a bit longer.
And if you asked the average person to name a broadcast analyst for football, pro or college, they would probably say John Gruden, and you sit with him every Monday night. You were with him last Saturday night. I can't imagine. I mean, he's so unpredictable. He's so colorful. Talk a little bit about being his setup man.
Paul, he hasn't stopped coaching. He's just coaching a different team. He's coaching our team. You better come ready when you come to the game. In terms of preparation, when you're doing a game with John, he loves teaching us football. That whole joke around Spider 2, why banana? That play, I can draw that play. I recognize terminology in West Coast offenses now, and I never played football, but I've come to learn all this being around John, and I see the game of football totally differently because of his influence. So he loves having that. I don't want to speak for him, but I think he loves the quarterback camp where he can kind of get his hands on these quarterbacks and see where the game is going. He loves watching the college game for trends. As a matter of fact, when John got fired, one of the first things he did was head out to Oregon just to see what Chip Kelly's doing, why he's doing it, because he picked up the stats and he said, how are these guys averaging this amount of yards per carry? Not the passing, but the running. And he wanted to know, once he looked at the film, how do they get these unbelievable running lanes? And he went out and spent time with Chip and Mark Helfrich, and eventually, and Chip came back and spent some time with John. So he hasn't stayed away from the game. I think he's in this broadcasting thing for a while now. His last contract just said that he's going to stay out of coaching through 2021. I think he likes it, but I still think he's been able to stay close enough to it without having to deal with the absolute stresses of, the crazy radio people who get their own show like Finebaum.
No doubt. Mike, I'm curious because I know broadcasters, as a play-by-play person, I mean, your job is to present the game, and you can't get hung up on whether it's a great game or whether it's just an absolute rout. But
Right.
You get those, whether you want them or not. When a game is just completely out of sync and to the point where it's almost unwatchable, does it change anything, or do you simply still have to broadcast the game?
You mean last week's Carolina game?
Well,
Carolina
that was
Arizona
actually
game?
I missed the second quarter. I fell asleep.
And with good reason, too. I'm glad you woke up. You know what, Paul? I've always said this about any sport we do. When the game gets bad, you have to be better because you have a responsibility to the players, to the hardcore fans, and you're trying to save an audience. Really, this is a business. And, your show is judged by the number of people that listen. And same thing with our television broadcast. Now, you can't control what happens in the game, but you certainly can make what's happening out there somehow, some way interesting. And the best thing to do is to get out of the way of a great game. There's nothing like being able to do that. But when the game does turn bad, it's a different professional challenge. And Lee Corso, in the years that I worked with Lee and Kirk doing college football games, I learned so many life lessons from Lee, and one of them was play against perfection. Doesn't matter who the opponent is. If they're better than you or you're a lot better than them, perfection's out there to try to match. And I've really taken that to heart over the years. And those aren't the fun ones. The fun ones are the great games where you're just laying out and calling a play and moving on to the next play. But if that happens, you kind of deal with it, and you realize they're paying you to wear makeup, talk, and watch sports, and life is really, really good.
I know you and almost anyone at your level should, I know you do, appreciate where you are, and no one gave it to you, you earned it. But when you think about the year of doing the Masters and the Open, the British, you did the World Cup, I mean, you're doing the Monday night game. Do you stop? Or I guess there isn't much time to stop and think about it. But talk a little bit about the journey for you, because we spent so much time lately reflecting on Stuart Scott, someone I know that you cared greatly for. Yeah,
I did. I'm bummed that I can't be there in North Carolina tomorrow, as they have the service for Stuart. No, we're going to have another one in a few weeks somewhere on the East Coast. But I'll tell you this, too, anecdotally, Paul. I was doing a Big Ten game in Minnesota this week on Tuesday, and 27-year-old guy came up to me, and he said, I'm sorry for your loss, for all of you at ESPN. You all seem so close and get along so well. And I said, we do. For a business with a lot of egos and people who've been there a long time, we do. There's a great respect for folks. And he said, I grew up watching Stuart and you guys, and he rattled off a bunch of people who've been there a long time. And he said, and now my 4-year-old son who's standing next to him, he said, he's watching the same people I grew up watching. That was a wow for me, just that we're a cable network with warts. We're not perfect, but it's so humbling to know that people consider us part of their sports experience, and sports means so much in the U.S. So, yeah, actually this week, Paul, I have reflected on it a little bit and reached out to some of the people who've been important in my career, who I've grown up with in the business. And it's great to work at a place where you are allowed to try different things, and that's been the joy of ESPN, taking your show national, Stuart and his highlights and all the other things. The people who we've worked with over the years, there's always been a willingness to try. And if I worked someplace else, I don't know if I'd have the same success or the same career. So I'm fortunate for that, and just opportunities like this. We're at a place where they have so many rights and so many different events that I still get to do the thing that I started doing in this business when I was a college kid at Syracuse in the mid-'80s, and that's call a football game on radio. That doesn't happen in a lot of other places, so I am really blessed about it. And it's funny you asked that, because this week was a lot about, in quieter moments, reflecting on where we've been and where we're still going.
Because I think sometimes, not to wax too poetic here, Mike, but I have a schedule. It's minuscule and meager, really, compared to what you do, although to me it was overwhelming for the first time.
No,
and
you were cranking it out this year, man. You were. I know how busy you were to do this every day, and then hit the road and do the stuff on the road, and then be available to Sports Center. Like we said, we're not building buildings.
No.
We're not curing disease, but there is a performance factor. You've got to be ready to quote perform constantly, and there is a drain on it, no doubt.
But I started thinking, someone asked me on New Year's Eve in New Orleans, well, how was the year gone? And I said, I really don't remember. And I was thinking of the travel that, the international travel that you do. And I mean, and I saw you doing the Big Ten game, and you're doing the championship game and the Saturday game in Carolina. And I just wonder sometimes that it's sad that it takes an event of this magnitude to get someone like you or anyone to reflect, I guess.
It is a blur at times, and like for so many folks here, due north is family and people at home, and my wife, my kids, and my son and daughter both play sports, and that's my comeback to reality. You're coming home for that, and it energizes you, and then there's another event and another game, and the score is 0-0, and you have no idea when you're going to walk into the next great moment of sports that you have the chance to document. So those things keep going, and there's all the cliches out there and all those state phrase of the day calendars that you can rip off, where people give you all these motivational things for looking ahead and don't look back because people are gaining on you and all that. It's true. If we don't have a forward thinking, and that's why I love football so much, because you've got to forget that last play, you've got to forget that last series, you've got to forget last week, and go forward. And I think we've adopted professionally a lot of those elements to just not sit there and go, oh my gosh, it's another seat with a number and a letter that I'm going to sleep in on a red eye here tonight. And you get by it because we are taken care of quite well.
You mentioned doing the game on radio, and I could be wrong, but I think that's you may do. Do you do the playoffs at all on the NBA?
No,
the final game?
NBA playoffs. Yeah, the NBA playoffs. I've done the finals a bunch of years, and I think this will be. I'm lost because we don't have Alabama or Auburn. This is my 6th year doing the title, and obviously, as you guys know, the last 4 in a row won by Bama or Auburn, and then last year Auburn, Florida State out in the Rose Bowl. So this will be the 6th year doing this for me.
And when you get to that game, because you don't see a lot of college ball like you used to. I know normally you've done the Citrus Bowl, and I don't think you could do that this year.
Right.
But what's it like for you to get in that stadium, and even though it's a professional stadium?
Exactly. I'll be the one who knows my way around there
for
a change. Yeah, I love it. I love it. I have not gotten far away from college football. You can ask Herb Street. I'll text him 10, 15 times a week questions. What do you think about this? What are you seeing with that? On Saturdays, we watch college football. After we do our meetings with the home team for Monday Night Football, we get on that Monday night bus, and that 3:30 Eastern, 2:30 Alabama time game is usually on, and we'll sit and watch that game. And then at night, very often, our dinner plans, if we all get together, are based on, hey, we need to get a reservation somewhere where there's a TV so we can watch the primetime game. So I try to stay in touch with the sport because I love it. And I live in Ann Arbor, Michigan, so you're around one of the 10 or 15 hotbed places of the sport. So while not doing games day to day, it's increased my fandom of college football. And I've got some concerns about the game going forward. I don't know if we're doing the right thing here with the sport in general, with the amount of plays being run and all that. But the game has never been more entertaining and brings so much diversity to how it's played that I think in many regards there's more of an appeal to the college game right now than the pro game. Although from a football standpoint, I don't know if this is the healthiest for college football going forward.
Would love to continue that some other time. Mike will be doing the game on Monday night on ESPN Radio, and I think you'll probably see him a couple of other places between now and then. Thank you so much, Mike. What a pleasure to be with you.
Hey, before you were part of the company, I was a fan. I'd drive around and listen to you during the week as I was doing drop-offs for soccer practice. I love the show, and you guys had a great year with the SEC Nation show and all that. So anytime, man, I'd love to catch up and talk more sports with you.
Thank you so much, Mike.
Thanks, Paul.
Great to talk to you. Mike Tirico, one of the absolute best. I will tell you this, the night I was hired by ESPN, the very first text I got was from him, and I was like, you got to be kidding me. I didn't realize he knew my name. But he is a kind man in addition to being the best in the business. We'll take a short break. Back with more.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Let's go to James in Dallas, Texas. How are you, James?
Good. Hi, Paul. Hey, the reality is Allen High School in the great state of Texas could have could have beaten the non-conference foes of A&M, Ole Miss, and Mississippi State. And they only played 8 games conference, and one of those may have been a Vanderbilt. And saying the SEC cannibalizes itself kind of makes me want to laugh out loud.
Okay, let me stop you right there. And I've used the same line. I used it yesterday. How does the SEC cannibalizing itself have an effect on what happens in a January 1st bowl game?
That's not my point.
Well, what is your point?
It has no relation to what I'm saying.
Well, no. I'll ask you again. What are we talking about here?
What's the point? I'm talking about.
I know what my point is. I don't know what your point is.
My point is, you talk about the SEC cannibalizing themselves, and Mississippi State was number 1 for weeks, and yet Allen High School, the state champ in Texas, could have probably beaten every one of their non-conference opponents. And they only play 8 conference games, the SEC, and one of those may end up being one of the lowly ones like Kentucky or Vandy. And to say that they're cannibalizing themselves within the conference.
Okay, I do. So you're talking about Mississippi State, non-conference, Southern Miss. I am, if you let me talk.
Okay.
Southern Miss, UAB, South Alabama, and UT Martin. And so who's this Texas high school team you're talking about?
That's a state champ for the great state of Texas. One state.
And you're telling me that team could beat. Hold on, slow down, buddy. You don't know how to stop talking for 1 second. Let me make my point because you asked me.
My friend.
Well, listen, you're the one who called me. I'm really sorry, but I'm trying to talk, and you're not letting me talk. Southern Miss, the best high school team in Texas, could have beaten Southern Miss. I doubt it. The best high school team in Texas could have beaten UAB, which had a 500 record. I doubt it. The best high school team in Texas could have beaten South Alabama, which went to a bowl game. I sincerely doubt it. Maybe UT Martin would have been a competitive game, but other than that, you're completely wrong.
Shouldn't have been even one game competitive with a high school team.
You're the one who said the best team in Texas would have beaten Mississippi State's schedule.
Was terrible, and they were number 1 in the nation, thanks to the likes of you and ESPN.
No, the folks at ESPN had nothing to do with it.
Oh, okay. Wait for most ESPN.
Who is your team, James?
I like them all.
No, that's not a good answer. Who is your favorite team?
Are you going to tell me how to answer since it's your show?
No, I just think most people have a favorite team.
I just told you I like college football. I just look at their schedules. And
first of all, James, you're not telling the truth. Everyone has a favorite team. Who is your favorite team?
Do I have to take a lie detector test to be on your show, Paul? Is that the requirement?
It wouldn't be a bad idea considering you haven't told the truth about half of what you said.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
We welcome you back. Always good to visit with Coach Jim Donnan, former Georgia coach, assistant under Barry Switzer at Oklahoma, and, of course, won a national championship as well at Marshall. Coach Donnan, Happy New Year. It's always good to visit.
Glad to be with you, Paul. Happy New Year.
Thank you. Before we get to Monday night, we were talking about, I mentioned you had 2 players that were in the selected today of the College Football Hall of Fame. You're certainly a Hall of Famer as well. But I have to ask you about coaching not only Brian Bosworth, but coaching under Barry Switzer during an amazing run at Oklahoma and surviving.
Hey, let me tell you something. People don't realize how intelligent Barry Switzer is. He had a chance to go to the Naval Academy. He's got a tremendous sense of direction with his offense and defensive schemes, and he let his coaches coach. He was a tremendous guy at articulating what he wanted from you. He was just really great motivator to the players. And, of course, as you've brought out, we had a lot of Hall of Fame players. I mean, when you have to ask Troy Aikman to transfer because he can't play in our system, you know things are good as far as what you're doing. He ended up being in the Hall of Fame too, but we did that, with Troy because it was the best for Troy, and he went to UCLA, and the rest is history. But Boz was a good player, and obviously when he became changed from Brian Bosworth, as was well chronicled on this deal that ESPN had a few months ago, which was tremendous, he became the Boz. It was just a different situation, and I think since he's gotten out of football, he's really learned a lot from it, and he deserved it. He's one of the most dominating football players that I've ever played against as a coach, because I was at Missouri for a year. or coached with, because he was just outstanding, and he benefited from a really good defensive front, guys like Tony Casillas and Reed and some of these guys. We had some great up front guys, but he was a tremendous player.
Coach Donnan, before we get to the national championship, I would like to go back to last Wednesday and Thursday. Pretty brutal two-day stretch for the Southeastern Conference. You've coached in this league. You've been a commentator. Your takeaway, and do you agree with some of those who are not writing the SEC off, but certainly knocking the SEC pretty hard?
Well, I want to make sure I mention Michael Payton, too, for I didn't get to finish. Our quarterback at Marshall was outstanding and helped us get going there and win the national championship. But, I think we created a monster here with the SEC, and, everybody's copying them. You look at a carbon copy there in Ohio State with the athletes they have. Michigan State, very athletic. I mean, to be able to compete on that level, the teams that beat them had comparable athletes. TCU, tremendous team speed, unbelievable ability to move the football in open space against a really good Ole Miss defense. Mississippi State, I think kind of lost a lot of its luster at the end of the year and didn't play nearly as good. They played without their defensive coordinator, and that's no excuse. But let me tell you, nobody wants to play Georgia Tech. They were tremendous in the game, and of course LSU found a way to lose that game. I thought they could have taken it to them a little bit better, and if they could have got the ball away from them, maybe they would. But and then of course, who knows about what happened in the Auburn game? That was just inexplicable to me, because Auburn very much was a better football team, I thought, going into it, but they had a lot of trouble that day.
It seemed like the Mississippi schools had the deepest descent. You alluded to the problems at Mississippi State, and I suppose there are reasonable issues with Treadwell and others at Ole Miss. But what did happen to Ole Miss and Mississippi State, if you could put your finger on it?
Well, I don't think enough credit's due to Ole Miss from the standpoint they did beat Boise, too. So, some really big wins for them. I mean, over the course of the season, Mississippi State and Alabama and Boise, all top 10, 12 teams. But, they lost their punch on offense. They really couldn't generate any offense there in the bowl game and lost a lot of confidence. And certainly I think Gary Patterson, what a great job he's done coaching that football team, and has always been very competitive year in and year out, except the first couple of years in the Big 12. But I just think they had a real burr in their saddle in that game and wanted to prove it. And then Georgia Tech, they showed you against Florida State what they're capable of, and it's hard to play option football. But if you get over 600 yards of total offense, you should win the game. And the turnovers just killed Mississippi State in that game, and I give Georgia Tech a lot of credit. But both of those teams have big years and a lot to be proud of, but when it all gets back to it, I mean, you only got one or two shots to get the limelight, and I just don't see Mississippi or Mississippi State being a front runner every year in the SEC West.
And Coach Donnan, not to cry over spilled milk, but there was criticism last Thursday night, obviously of the defense, but in particular of some of Lane Kiffin's offensive play selection. You're an offensive guy. You called plays for Barry Switzer. You've coached that position. You played quarterback at NC State. What was going on during that game from what you were seeing on your television?
Well, it was a horror show for me as an old offensive coach, because you could see things that were there, but I never like to be too critical of a coach and not know what the game plan was. But I do know this, that you got a back like Henry in your head 21-6. You got to feed him the ball, and I'm sure there's reasons why they didn't. But for him to go from the first quarter to the middle of the third without touching it, it's hard to understand unless he went to the French Quarter for a little while and just didn't make it back. But overall, I think Ohio State really showed me a lot. Urban Meyer's a master technician, a master motivator. They were ready to go. And their third down conversions on both sides, stopping Alabama with a couple 3-and-outs, and then their ability, I talked to my old player, Kirby Smart, a little bit about their ability to get them off the field, on their defensive standpoint, and then offensively to maintain possessions. And that's what we'll talk about in this Oregon game. I mean, anytime you can get 3 more plays and you got the powerhouse running game that Ohio State has and the passing game that Cardell Jones, it was just a tremendous team victory.
Coach, you mentioned Kirby Smart, who's been one of the better defensive coordinators around. But a lot of commentators, I say commentators, are saying that it's over for the defense. These offenses are too complex. You've been in the SEC a long time. You know, you were there when defenses did rule, with the possible exception of what Spurrier was doing. What's going on that side of the ball in the SEC?
Well, you go back to the SEC. Steve came in here and started throwing the ball all over the place. Nobody knew how to defend it. I mean, he really did a great job of coaching and teaching it. Then all of a sudden, everybody had to play it, and they had to learn how to defend it, and obviously they got better at it and got more competitive. But in the case of these wide-open offenses, the spread attack, it's very difficult to have a master plan defensively where you can go in there and out-coach people as far as having schemes and different calls and trying to get set up to try to break down everything you can, because you just can't call all these defenses. They don't give you a chance to. They go too fast. They know what they're doing. And then when you get in space, the guys that are 250, the McLeans, the guys like that, that have been such a big part of Kirby and Nick's defense, it's just very difficult to cover these guys. So I think there's got to be an evolution here. There's going to be maybe come back a little bit to it, but I think the spread's here to stay right now. The training of high school quarterbacks, the ability to be ready early as a freshman quarterback and play, the way people throw and catch the ball, and also the physicality of being able to just line up and mash it. Man, it's unbelievable the way these teams get after you. If you go out and give you a little bit of chance in the box where you can run the ball.
Two quick questions. One, we'll ask you about the game, but before we do that, your opinion of Mark Richt's decision to hire Brian Schottenheimer as the offensive coordinator, replacing Mike Bobo.
Well, I'm happy for Mike, first of all. He's one of my players. He's had a tremendous run as a coach, and he'll do a great job out there at Colorado State. He's very fired up about it. I think Mark certainly wanted to continue what they've been doing here since Mark got here. They wanted to look at continuing to be a pro-stop passing game. They've got Chubb back. They've got good receivers. And, there's not as many people out there that do that. Everybody's into the spread. And I think being able to get Brian in here is going to be a big plus. It's going to help their recruiting because he's coached guys like Chad Pennington, Brett Favre, a Heisman Trophy winner, and Sam Bradford. But he's been a little bit limited from the standpoint of nothing against these guys, but he's coached on staffs that have defensive head coaches, Ryan and also, Fisher. And a lot of times you play around that a little bit, and so they don't have the gaudy stats. But this place is tailor-made for somebody coming in there and keep it going, and I think Brian will do a terrific job.
Coach, you picked 8 out of the 9 BCS winners on this program. It's an annual event. I can't remember which one you missed, but shame on you.
I missed Florida and Oklahoma because I thought Murray was going to play. But let me tell you something. I miss a whole lot more than I get right. But for some reason, I've been getting these championship games right.
Well, this is a pretty tight game. The spread is 6.5, 7, something like that. A lot of varying opinions. What is yours?
Well, my opinion is such that the best player certainly is on the Oregon team, and they've had a tremendous run. When you look at Chip Kelly, 46-7, and then Helfrich coming in here has been outstanding, taking over the reins. They really make you worry a lot about different things. But the one thing that I feel like the real advantage for Ohio State is they practice against this every day. They see it. The hurry up won't bother them. They got plenty of depth. And I'm going to hit you with one thing. This will be their 3rd straight game in a dome stadium. They're used to this atmosphere. They're used to conditioning that you got to have. The anxiety in dome stadiums sometimes take over, and you get a lot of cramps and everything because you think it's going to be, really perfect conditions, but there's a lot of sweating and everything. I like Ohio State's presence running the ball. I like Jones, the quarterback. I just think Ohio State's going to pull it off.
Jim Donnan goes with the Buckeyes. Coach, many thanks. We'll talk soon. I can't wait.
Okay, Pat, thank you.
You got it. Great stuff from the former Georgia coach, Jim Donnan. We'll talk to another coach, Butch Davis, in about 30 minutes. Until then, we'll grab your phone calls at 855-242-7285. Don't go anywhere. We're right back.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Okay, we're back, and it is Friday. Nothing important going on in the college football world. But Jim called earlier, was upset, and we received a message from someone claiming to be the person that well, it's not someone. I mean, we know it's the person that did the parodied account, and he essentially said if Jim would call in and apologize to Phyllis, he would cease and desist. So let's find out if Jim is willing to play along.
You must be crazy. You know me, fella. That boils my blood, and I'm going to tell you why. Paul, first of all, I told you the whole situation. I never said anything that woman claimed I said. I never tweeted anything. That was those fakes that did those tweetings. I don't know if she believed it or not. I don't know what she did because she's very confused at times to me. But she accused me. She personally has ruthlessly attacked me for 4 months now. She claimed she was going to go on your show the day I jumped on that Anna lady, and she backed me, and she said, I got your back, Jim. She wrote me that in a DM message. I didn't do a thing. I just waited. And then all of a sudden she turned around and just reversed it and came on your show and attacked the hell out of me. And you want me to apologize? You don't know me very well, fella. I don't apologize. She's the one that needs to apologize. And no stinking bribe, con man, coward like that fake Jim of Tuscaloosa that's a fake is going to be able to provoke me into being, apologizing when I ought to be apologized to. You get that? Like Phyllis said, you understand me? I can talk like Phyllis because I feel more passion and I've got more guts than Phyllis because I'm an honest man. I'm an honest guy. She's dishonest. No, she owes me the apology. And you can take those stinking fake Jims and stick them up his you-know-what. That's how mad that makes me, and I'm serious. You know I'm serious. Now, you respond to that.
Jim?
No, I'm right, Paul. You think I ought to apologize? Would you apologize to Matt Coulter? It's even worse. This situation is worse than that. And I'm going to tell you something, John.
You're really getting personal now.
John, you're out of line. You're way out of line to get involved in what you said. You're way out of line, John Hayes.
Why is that, Jim?
Because you had no business saying what you said. You got it backwards, man. Do you apologize to people that do things harmfully wrong to you?
Well, Jim, I know you. Jim, you're a good man. You always do things the right way, and I figured
but that means I don't apologize.
You got to take the high road, Jim. It's time to take the high road. Apologize for the comments that you made. You got the high road mixed up, pal. You don't apologize for something you've never done when somebody that attacks you personally, they're the ones that need to apologize. Do you not get that? I mean, John, you're a college graduate. That's probably your problem. I talked about a lot of educated fools. I am not an educated fool. Jim, remember, I'm not just an educated fool. I'm an educated Yankee fool. Don't
whatever you want to claim you are, John, I'm just telling you, I know what's going on. I know what's right. I know what's wrong. And I'm not going to bow down and apologize when I'm the one that ought to be apologized to, John. I'm the one that deserves the apology.
We're imploring you, Jim. The floor is yours. The floor is yours, Jim. Make the apology.
I've already had the floor, John.
And this will all go away.
And I've told it like it is. And look, I'm not. You think I'm going? Oh man, this is ridiculous.
Paul. We tried, Paul. He
well, no, you didn't do nothing, John. You ran your mouth. Paul, you got a response? I do respect your response to some degree.
I'll tell you what my response is, Jim.
Okay, go ahead.
You're entitled to lead
I
your
asked you a question a while ago. Would you apologize to Matt Coulter after what you went through with him? And you know I know, and you know everybody knows about that.
I probably, we became friendly after that.
Well, all I'm saying, the reason I brought him up, Paul, is fair territory to bring his name up, because you got my business on the street now,
Yeah,
pal.
by the way, in fact, I think I did, because I explained the situation to him.
You realize you're putting my business on the street, even though I've enjoyed your show and doing this crap. It's halfway.
Well, Jim, let me give you you asked me a question, I'll give it to you.
Go ahead.
I give people advice when they ask for it. And
I didn't ask for your advice.
Well, that's why I'm not going to give it.
I asked your response.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to tell you what to do. That's the way I leave my life.
You can't tell me what to do, but I wanted your response in regard to what I said.
Well, yeah, I want you to do what you think is right, because I don't know
what I think is right. I told you the truth, and I told the audience the truth. I deserve nobody to apologize to. I deserve to be apologized to me. The abuse. I'm the one that's been abused, Paul, and God is my witness. That's the truth. And get Joe Osteen to sign a contract with me. I'm telling the truth. I don't deserve to apologize to anybody. I'm the one that's been personally attacked, lied about, and abused, and that's a fact. And I'll stand before Almighty God and put my hand in His hand. He knows the truth. That's the truth, Paul. Yeah, it makes me very mad this has happened. But I can't do anything about it except tell you the truth. I got spanked, Paul, and it did me good.
I've gotten spanked a few times. It's done me good. You still there, Jim? I don't hear Jim. You hear Jim?
No, he's vaporized. He's not going to apologize. We should just move on. As much as we'd like him to, he's just not going to do it.
Thanks, Jim. I didn't hear you any longer, so. Life's lessons on Friday. Charlie is calling next. Good evening, Charlie.
Good afternoon.
Hey, how are you?
I'm great, sir. And yourself?
Not bad. I'm getting there.
Good deal. Me too.
Good.
I'm loving this show. I'm loving it.
Secretly, so am I.
Oh, this is me. I'm on television.
Yeah. There you are, Charlie. You made it.
Hey, good deal. I'm on my telephone. Sorry, Paul. I'm on my phone and trying to listen at the same time. Okay. Reason I called, my cousin listened to you back in the early 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought he was wasting his time listening to somebody on the radio all the time about football, which I'm a Bama fan. He goes by Bama Joe. I'm a Bama fan as well. Once you guys started this show and I started watching it, you guys are super. Everything you do is wonderful, and the big swagoo, and you're the little swagoo, and John, and got all these redneck fans calling in from all over the world. Roll Tide. I'm glad I made it on television. And I'm listening to TV and my phone as well.
Thank you, Charlie. Have a good weekend. Thanks for the call. And, we have to go to a break? Shucks. We'll be right back.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
I just heard Charles from Reeltown on that intro. What happened to him? Haven't heard from him since the Auburn season went to 8-5. Let's continue. Matt in Cincinnati on a Friday night. Hey, Matt.
Good evening, Paul. I hope you're staying warm down there in Charlotte because it's now 15 degrees here in Cincinnati this evening. Question I have for you, Paul, today is the Alabama defense from this Ohio State game. Do you see any kind of possible changes on the defensive side of the ball, at least as far as in terms of coaching wise?
Yes, I do. I alluded to that a minute ago that I wouldn't be surprised if you saw some changes. I'm not saying that. I mean, you don't just walk in there and clean house after a national semifinal appearance, but I think it's possible you'll see at least one change.
Okay. Yeah, and then the thing about Jim, do you realize that there's actually high school yearbooks out there proving that Jim from Tuscaloosa hasn't played a single down of football or a single down of baseball in his life in his high school career?
I've never heard that. I mean, I've always heard that Jim was a great player in high school.
Contrary to what he always says. But anyway, that's the only thing I got, Paul, and you have a good weekend, okay?
You too. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it. Never had this before. Back-to-back calls from Cincinnati. Gary, what's up?
Hey, Mr. Finebaum, how you doing this evening?
Pretty well, thanks.
I'm from Loveland, which is just outside of Cincinnati there.
Okay.
You had another call a little earlier that suggested that Urban left Florida because Nick Saban was getting all the recruits. But I was just going to let him know the real reason why Urban left is because he's got a medical condition, which is an anxiety disorder. And he's got a fear of losing phobia.
Yeah, he really does. I mean, Urban's lost so much in his career.
Well, you know that last year at Florida, he lost 3 or 4 games, and I don't know if you've ever noticed him on the sideline, but he keeps a sweat towel with him at all times.
Yeah, Gary, do you realize Urban's no longer at Florida?
Yeah, he's at Ohio State.
Yeah, he's been there 3 years. He went undefeated his first year. He had an undefeated regular season last year, lost the championship game, and this year, I think he's done pretty well. What's your point?
He's done great, and that's why he's done that. I just don't know how long he's going to last, because that Jim Harbaugh is.
Oh, I'm sure he's really concerned about Jim Harbaugh.
Well, he may or may not be, and Michigan State's going to be.
I mean, do you realize you just got through beating Nick Saban?
That's great.
Yeah, it actually is great. Andy is next in Perrysburg, Ohio. Andy, when I have to defend Ohio State on this show, things are out of whack.
Well, I'll just let you know that Cincinnati is barely Ohio, and only sometimes. So, but Paul, it's Freak Flag Friday. Fly your flag. Who was it who came up with that? It was a
Kiss the ring. That was our good friend Legend.
Yeah, he's been persona non grata recently. I wonder why. But hey, Paul, before I talk about the game, it's no secret that I've had my issues with Jim from Tuscaloosa in the past. You know, I thought he was an egomaniacal, loudmouth schnook, and it even got to the point where you put both of us on the radio at once, and I pretty much broke his brain and destroyed him. You featured it in the podcast, and it's on Finebaum Fan in perpetuity, preserved on the internet, so if you don't have to question me, you can just listen to it. But, you know, I recently got on Twitter, and I came across his Twitter account, and I've been following him, and you know what? He's well thought out. He's concise. He's charming. He's humorous. I mean, he's just fantastic on there. I don't know if it's the translation between the spoken words to the written words, or he has time to think about things. But I encourage you and everyone else to follow him at Jim of Tuscaloosa. He's at Jim of Tuscaloosa.
By the way, Andy, I think he's next. I think he's on with you now.
That's a phony account that you heard a while ago, Paul. That admitted he was there. But this stinking rat. Hey, Andy, get on my tail now, you punk, you cockroach ambulance chaser. You're a stinking low-life jerk. You're an idiot, and I don't give a crap what you think. You're a Yankee carpet-bagging punk. You're a thug. You're a liar.
Jim, you've been so nice to me on Twitter at your Jim of Tuscaloosa account. I don't understand. What have I done wrong? Why are you so angry right now? What's going on?
Andy, you can't tell me anything. You're just an idiot. You're a total idiot. You come on here just trying to make trouble. You're no good. You're a filthy, stinking liar. You're trying to contribute to the trouble now, and you got nothing, Andy. You're a weasel. You're a candy-ass wimp. You're nothing. You're a punk.
Well, I guess the I-Man was right, and Jim must be off of his medication, because, I tell you, we were direct messaging back and forth on there, and he was saying kind, complimentary things about me, and now he's calling me all sorts of dirty names on the radio. I just don't understand this, Jim of Tuscaloosa. I mean, what happened? What'd I do?
You probably are the fake Jim. You are Matt from Cincinnati. I'm told both of you might have something to do with that, especially you and Matt.
Is that true, Andy? Is that true?
What's that?
Are you and Matt from Cincinnati responsible for the fake account?
I don't know any Matt in Cincinnati. So, no, I'm not responsible for what's this fake account? There's an account that's fake? Jim, could you explain this to me? I don't think we've heard anything about this.
Nobody believes. You're a stinking liar. You lie in court. You lie to win a court case. You'll lie for anything.
Hold on. Andy, is it true that you've lied in court?
I don't believe I have ever lied in court. Could you please substantiate that allegation, Jim?
Damn big mouth. A lying, stinking mouth. That's what you are, Andy. You're a cockroach. A low-life cockroach.
You're a low-life cockroach.
You can't substantiate that allegation at all. Thank you for answering that. In the future, when someone asks you that, just say, no, I can't, and I'm stupid. Okay?
contest. Is that lowlife running over me now, or am I running over his stinking, rotten, lying ass? That's what you are, Andy. You're a liar.
Well, I don't know what's made Jim so upset and so angry, and what's got his panties in a bunch about this when he was so nice to me online before. But to talk about the game, I think the Buckeye defense absolutely is going to be able to pressure Marcus Mariota. We're going to be able to stop him. We're going to be able to sack him. He does have a tendency to get sacked and to fumble the ball, and I think you're going to see that. And I think that Ohio State absolutely has the speed at all the positions on defense needed to cover the skill positions there. Jim, do you have an intelligent take on the game you'd like to share with us? Are you
my little quicker than you got, you moron. You are.
Okay.
What's wrong with you, Paul? I mean, Andy, is you have no character, you have no integrity, and you're an indecent, stinking human being. You're just a stupid, rotten, low-life, no good human being. That's what you are.
Well, Jim, for someone who's so vain, I find it amazing because when I was in the studio with Paul and Ryan Haney and everybody else, they showed me your picture, and you've got to be the ugliest man I have ever seen to be so vain. I mean, what's this all about?
Jealous. That's not my picture. I'm not an old man, you fool. You're a stupid, lying propaganda, no-good scum. That's what you are, Andy. That's what you are. That's
you know what you are, Jim? Jim, do you know what you are?
Are you a perpetrator?
Jim, you are a delusional, self-absorbed, crazy, shut-in, homebody nut job who thinks that he's in charge of this entire show. And your self-importance is so hyper-inflated by Twitter that it is just amazing. It is hilarious. We've been on here for a week spelling out Twitter handles, talking about the technical support staff on this show and how it will cater to you. And no one cares, Jim. Absolutely no one cares. You don't have a take on football. You don't have a good take on the show. You don't have a good take on the callers. You don't have a good take on anything. You're a nut, and we're all laughing at you, including everyone associated with the show. Have you ever heard the phrase, you give a person enough rope to hang themselves? Jim, you've been given enough rope to hang yourself and to loop around the world 4 times over, and you just make mockery of yourself over and over and over again, and you've done it for years, and it's fantastic.
I think Jim has left the building, Andy. And so has Andy. We'll talk about what? No, we're not talking college football on this show. Who came up with that idea?
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
The segment wasn't planned, by the way. We literally dragged our next guest in off the street to try to calm everyone down for 5 or 10 minutes, maybe talk some football before we go back to the craziness. He is Booger McFarland, and Boog, good to see you. Enjoyed the film room. We watched the Alabama-Ohio State game. We just had a recreation of that. Alabama and Ohio State fan having it out, and according to the control room, the Buckeyes won again.
Yeah, especially after the way the Sugar Bowl ended. Hopefully Alabama, the Alabama fan that was on the phone, hopefully put up a fight in the fourth quarter because, the Tide this year in the fourth quarter, they kind of struggled a little bit coming down the stretch.
I saw an Ezekiel.
That 85-yard run. I mean, hey, you got to stop that down the stretch.
Yeah, we were sitting together. I looked over you like, what? I mean,
you know what? You know what's so funny about that? Because I could have drawn up a lot of ways for Alabama to lose the game, and I think nobody would have suspected that they would lose the game by getting gashed with the run. Yeah. And I think that's the biggest surprise. Like, Alabama has lost some games, but very rarely do they get physically kind of manhandled at the line of scrimmage. And when you give up over 200 yards rushing, 281 to be exact, that's something an Alabama team usually doesn't give.
You've done talk radio, you've done commentary, so you call it like you see it. And we were both fairly down on the SEC that night.
Fairly?
I mean, in the moment, and there was a little bit of pushback, but talk a little bit about what you saw then and a week later, 8 days later, Has anything changed?
No, nothing's really changed, Paul. You know, if you look at that day, and even the previous days before, the SEC kind of gave up on the defensive side of the football. I mean, if you look at LSU, if you look at Mississippi State, you look at Alabama, we got physical or physically manhandled from a running game that usually doesn't do that in the SEC. We're a conference that's built on defense. We're a conference that's built on having the best athletes that plays the most physical football. And I think the SEC bowl schedule kind of struggled with us a little bit because we didn't do that. And I think the Alabama game kind of put a punctuation mark on that, where we didn't quite show our physicality. And I think that was the most disappointing. And people can make excuses. I don't make any. We lost those games. Wisconsin beat Auburn. Ohio State beat Alabama. And when those games went that way, there was nothing the SEC could do but sit back and take their medicine. But what I will say is this. One night or one bowl season isn't going to take away 8 or 9 years of dominance. And so let's just understand the other conferences had their run, but one weekend or one bowl season doesn't change what the SEC's done over the last 8, 9, 10 years.
Let's look at Monday night with the only two outcomes we can have, an Ohio State or Oregon win. First, an Ohio State win. Mm-hmm. How does that change the whole Big Ten conversation? What does it mean?
I don't know if it really changes anything. I mean, Urban Meyer, we knew he could recruit.
Yeah. We
knew he was a good coach. I mean, he won 2 national championships at Florida. So you knew at some point he was going to be able to bring that same recruiting, that same demeanor up to Ohio State. And so I think the biggest surprise is we expected it next year. We expected his best team to be next year and not this year. So from a landscape of college football, I don't know if it really changes anything. I just think it lets you know that Ohio State is a year early and Urban Meyer is doing a great job.
And if Oregon wins, we'll hear a lot about the Pac-12, but we've already heard a lot about the Pac-12.
Well, I think if Oregon wins, it's big because we talked about Chip Kelly, we talked about Mike Bellotti, we talked about all that, and none of them could get it done. Like we named them the greatest coming. Mm-hmm. But if Mark Helfrich can go out there on Monday night and he can get the job done, then I think you got to say, you know what, he did something that Kelly and Bellotti couldn't do. And so I think this is bigger for Oregon than it is for Ohio State because Oregon kind of gets left behind out there on the West Coast. They play at 1 a.m. on the East Coast, and we never really get to see them. But they're going to be in prime time, and they're going to have an opportunity to put Pac-12 and to put the West Coast on the map on Monday night.
And you're absolutely right about that, and it would be a big moment because Oregon has missed so many moments. It didn't happen. I know I said maybe I sound like a fan at the end of the bar, but which I have occasionally. But what if somehow 2 or 3 plays had not happened? It would have been a great victory for Alabama, but I think experts would have seen some flaws. What if that Alabama team had come out of New Orleans and been matched up against this Oregon team? I realize you can't predict,
right.
But I mean, on a fair field, everyone shows up in a normal set of circumstances. Who would you have gone with?
Well, I think it's tough to go against Alabama in big game situations, although here of late, Nick Saban and his crew hasn't played well. Yeah. I think that's the matchup we wanted to see.
Yeah.
We wanted to see the big, mighty, bad guy coming out of the Southeastern Conference going against the best out West. You know, the Crimson Tide versus the Ducks. And so
this one just doesn't quite well, it's good. It's a great matchup.
It's great, it's not the matchup that I think the nation wanted to see.
Yeah.
Because regardless of what happens, I think when this bowl season ends, when the playoff game ends Monday night, it's still going to be the SEC's the best conference in the country. Mm-hmm. And even if Oregon or Ohio State wins, I think it's going to be that way. But somehow, some way, it would have been justified to have the best on the West against the best out of the SEC. Now, luckily for them, I don't think it's that way. And maybe for you and I, we're still dreaming, hoping maybe a play or two didn't go that way. But at the end of the day, you got to give Ohio State
I did want to see that
game
because I think you're right. Because I think if remember, the season started with Florida State, then they faded away. But if Oregon had beaten Alabama, it would have been. I mean, you can't be any more significant than a national championship. But that would have. It's a bad enough blow to the SEC, but that would have really been a blow.
Here's the question: does the national narrative change?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think so?
Well, I think it will until February 4th, whatever the date is, when Alabama hauls in the greatest class in history, and then and everyone else does, and suddenly we're back to where we were a year ago, that the SEC has 4 of the top 6, right. And then the polls come out. And, Alabama may not get as much love in the preseason polls as it has in the past for some obvious reasons, but
I think that's where this bowl season hurts the SEC. It's the preseason rankings, right. The perception, because everybody's going to say, do we really know what we know, or do we know what we thought we knew?
You're not going to go with Alabama. It's going to be tougher to go with Alabama.
Exactly.
I went with Alabama last year, and I was alone in most quarters because everyone loved Florida State.
Right.
I really believed Alabama was going to win.
Well, I think right now, regardless of what happens, Ohio State's preseason number one. I think if you're going to be a realist, I think Ohio State's preseason number one. I'm trying to feel like the highest-ranked SEC team probably is going to be Alabama. Maybe Mississippi State if that comes back.
Could be.
You know what I'm saying? So.
What about your old club down in Baton Rouge?
Got to get a quarterback. And that's, to me, been the most disappointing thing this year, is LSU kind of wasted a year. If you really think about it, they wasted a year. Because what's the narrative going into this season? LSU's got to develop Jennings, maybe bring Harris along. What's the narrative going into 2015? LSU's got to develop Jennings and bring Harris along. So, to me, LSU wasted a year, and you lost some very, very key talent on the defensive side of the football, Daniil Hunter, Collins, some of these guys going pro. So, I think the same question that we had going into 2014 is the same question you got going into 2015 at the quarterback position.
I mean, it's interesting. Kevin Sumlin had the same situation, not exactly the same situation, but he finally made a decision. And now he's got another quarterback probably debate coming up in the future, but he can live with it, where Les Miles has gone backwards.
Well, he's gone backwards because he refuses to, I guess, disappoint the kid. And by the kid, I mean Anthony Jennings.
Yeah.
And he sees something in Anthony Jennings maybe we don't see. I know the national audience hasn't seen it yet, just because every time we see him on tape or we see him play, he just doesn't quite get it. And I think this speaks more to Brandon Harris also, because if you're Brandon Harris and we're seeing Anthony Jennings, and some people are saying, man, how bad is Brandon Harris? Because he's got to be better than what we're seeing in Anthony Jennings. Either way, they got to get that figured out this spring, because the quarterback situation, LSU's had All-Americans at every position. I mean, if you think about it, Leonard Fournette looks like he's going to be an All-American. Yeah. They've had linemen, defensive, offensive, corners, safeties. Where's the quarterback been in Baton Rouge? And that's still the main question. And I think Les and Cam Cameron have to answer for that question also, because you can't just put it on Anthony Jennings and Brandon Harris. Where's the development of these kids at from the coaches? And so I think they all share a part in that.
How big a loss is John Chavis?
It's big, but it still doesn't trump the fact that we don't have a quarterback in Baton Rouge. I mean, there are great defensive coordinators around the country. Chavis was a great one, but it's almost like Andy Reid. You remember when Andy Reid was in Philly and he got fired, and everybody said, okay, yeah, it's time for a different voice in the room. Maybe it's time for a different voice in Baton Rouge. So I don't necessarily look at the John Chavis leaving that big a thing.
On that subject, because less is less. I mean, he's a great coach.
Right.
He played for a national championship 3 years ago this week and lost. But is there a number, or is it just a feel in Baton Rouge that if this program's either going forward with some speed, or it just isn't going anywhere?
I think it's stuck in neutral right now, and that's a bad thing, because if you're stuck in neutral, all the other programs, the Alabamas, Mississippi States, they're going by you. So theoretically, it's going behind, and I think it all happens at the quarterback position. And I think this is a very, very key time. If you look in the last couple of years, a lot of guys have left early. Okay, at some point, some of these freshmen and underclassmen have to not only stay, they got to stay and perform. And so it's a very, very critical time in Baton Rouge, and I think the faith will recognize that.
Booger McFarland, nice enough to join us as he has throughout the season on Friday night. You can see him later on, of course, on SEC Now. Great to be with him.
At some point, you got to come on SEC Now with me. I always come over and hang out with you. Are you ever going to come hang out with me?
I can't stay up as late as that show's on. Come on.
It's on at 7 o'clock
okay. I thought it was like one of those 11 o'clock shows.
No, that's only during the season.
Man, I'm like going, no way. I'm out of here. I'll be happy to do it.
I appreciate it.
It'll be fun.
Thank you for listening to the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast. Tune into the Paul Finebaum Show every day from 3 to 7 Eastern on the SEC Network or on the ESPN radio app.
Geico presents Strange Savings Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.